I'm here with Jimi Gibson. Jimi is a TEDx speaker, a vice president of brand communication at Thrive Agency, and a longtime messaging strategist with a background you wouldn't expect. He started his career as a professional magician. For over 25 years, Jimi has helped businesses and speakers craft clear and compelling messages that connect with real people. He created the trademarked Magic Script, a framework that blends performance principles with marketing strategy to drive action and engagement. Jimi is also a member of the Forbes Agency Council and has worked with Fortune 500 brands, solo entrepreneurs, and just about everyone in between. Whether it's a keynote, website, sales conversion, Jimi knows how to turn noise into meaning and make your message stick. Jimi, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, Ian. Thanks for having me.
It's a delight, Jimi. As a fan of magic, in particular, the Penn and Teller style Fool Us magic, what sort of magic do you do?
Oh, well, I was looking through some boxes a couple of years ago, and I actually found a membership to Merlin's Magic Mail Order Club when I was 4 years old. And so I was hooked at an early age while everybody else was going to like soccer camp and craft camp. I was going to magic camp on Long Island, which was the same camp that David Blaine went to and some other folks. So I was always fascinated with stage performance and manipulation. So, using your hands, but being on stage. And then I got the opportunity to actually star in a production with Large Illusions. We had a cast of 22. Then I actually started doing tours in Savannah, Georgia. There are a lot of ghost tours down there and nothing for families. And so I said, well, I'm going to do one for families and we're going to incorporate magic. And I actually got on the Food Network with Buddy Valestro, the cake boss, was featured on one of his episodes. And so I would say I'm just a fan overall of connecting with an audience and seeing that look on their face of wow. So yeah, I've performed for small groups of 20. I had my own theater in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And then I love walking out on stage and there being 2,000 people in the audience. So that's a quick flyby of what I like to do related to magic. Yeah.
What sort of magic do you not do, but you deeply enjoy watching?
I would say there are magicians which you just mentioned, Penn and Teller. They have a lot of magicians on there that do what is called close-up magic. And it's really a small group of people and lots of card work. I don't really study that area too much, but I'm fascinated. And it's really a treat for me because, when you're in the know and you watch another performer, you pretty much know how it's done, but you're just appreciating their performance style. But when it gets into some of that knuckle busting card work, I'm amazed. I went to see Shin Lim at the Mirage. He was a winner of obviously a national talent thing, America's Got Talent. So that same theater that he was in, I saw Siegfried and Roy. At one point in their show, they had 50 people on stage. That same theater that Shin Lim was in, just using a deck of cards with multiple thousands of people. I think that's how magic has sort of transitioned over the last 10 years. And that stuff just blows me away.
You talk about how magic is transitioned. I'd like to talk about how you transitioned from magic to marketing. Give us a bit of your journey there.
Yeah. So my transition was interesting. I was actually working for a very large company in high school through an advertising agency that I worked for. I was doing promotional shows for a Fortune 100 company. And it got to the point where I needed to pick a career and go to college. And I said, what could be a version of that in the business world? And really, marketing is the closest thing to magic because it's controlling attention. It's bringing people into this 3 phases that we'll talk about if we get into the magic script. And again, I was sort of hooked. It was the closest thing to magic that I could envision. And yeah, that sort of started me off. I started working at advertising agencies, which they were called back in that time frame, and which transitioned then into digital marketing agencies. And yeah, I actually still use magic in talks that I give or presentations that I might do at a webinar online or in person, those types of things. So yeah, I would say both of those have stuck with me throughout my career.
You talked about the 3 phases of the magic script system a moment ago. Let's get into it. How'd you create the framework? What are the phases? Let the audience know.
It's kind of funny. You know how you get so close to something after a while, something triggers you and you go, why didn't I think of that before? Like, this is crazy. And so as I was working with various brands, I wanted to be able to have a repeatable, scalable process. And, there's a million theories about how you should structure any type of communication related to marketing. And I thought, well, let me just go back to my roots. And I actually did some study with a Broadway director who was in the original cast of Annie. Some of y'all may have heard of Bob Fitch. I was part of a group that went to Montreal and we did a week-long training with him. And you were supposed to bring 2.5 minutes of performance. And then each night, somebody was critiqued on that performance for 3 hours on 2.5 minutes. It was a humbling experience, but then it really taught me the process in which you analyze how you're communicating with somebody that you want to impact. And of course, in a magic trick, you want to fool them, right? Spoiler alert, magic is not real. There is a trick involved, but there's a lot of psychology and how you choose your words, how you move your body, that type of thing. And so if I just broke down the structure of pretty much every magic trick, there are 3 phases. The connect phase. So a magician will walk out on stage. He will introduce some trick. And let's just say, for sake of ease, we'll say it's a deck of cards. So holds up a deck of cards. The audience is somewhat familiar with the deck of cards. They probably have one at home. And then the magician moves into the phase of curiosity. And that phase of curiosity would say, I point to somebody in the front row and I say, hey, there's 52 cards in the deck. There's 4 suits, clubs, hearts, spades, diamonds. I want you to just think about any card. And so all of a sudden the audience is going, wait a minute, they're just going to think of a card? What's going to happen here? And so they start to lean in, right? Then at the conclusion of the trick, I'm able to open up that deck of cards and that card rises out of the deck. They haven't said the name of the card until that particular moment. They haven't picked a card out of the deck. They've just named that card. And then all of a sudden the audience is like, wow. And so those 3 phases actually activate parts of the brain. And so the first phase where you're connecting is that oxytocin. That's the feel good, love hormone, not hormone, but neurotransmitter. And it's releasing chemicals in your body that says, oh yeah, I like this person. The next phase, curiosity, is releasing dopamine. And we've heard about dopamine release with social media. You're not actually addicted to social media. You're actually addicted to the expectation of a reward. And so when you have that expectation, you're like, oh, I hope somebody likes this post. I hope somebody comments on that post. And so you're going to stay in that level of dopamine until you get to that conclusion, the payoff, the trick where the card rises out of the deck. Or in marketing sense, the conversion, right? And that's a release of serotonin. And that release of serotonin is, hey, everything's right with the world. Everything has come to a conclusion. If you can follow that path, and then if you actually look at all of the magic tricks, you can categorize them into about 13 different effects. So you can have mind reading, you can have vanish, you can have appearance, you can have transformation, you can have transposition. If you just pick one of those and then you follow that course, you can map out a keynote speech, you can map out a blog post, you can map out a social media post, you can map out a video that you might post online. If you follow that, it's a very comfortable way for an audience to understand what's going on. You keep to a format that is very digestible, and it just feels good following that structure. So yeah, I would say it's one of those things that I should have known a long time ago, but sometimes you're too close to the topic. And then as I've tried to break it and trick it by putting something else in there, it just seems to work with everything. So yeah, pretty excited about how that structure works.
You've given us a wealth of detail about the structure itself. What's the last adjustment you made to your framework?
Probably the last adjustment was adding in those 13 effects. And then there's one more adjustment at the very end. But if you give too many choices to people, they'll just freeze up. And if you turn it over to somebody and they don't have a structure to follow, being able to pick one of those 13 gives it a really nice, easy way for somebody to be able to duplicate that, even if they've never created a magic trick before. And then I actually had somebody come to me and say, well, I've been using this for my LinkedIn posting, and I have a question about that. And I said, oh, what is that? I said, well, I'd really like to stop the scroll. And we hear about this term, the hook. And so when I started to think about that, I realized that the hook is actually that curiosity point. And so sometimes you'll have to flip the first 2 and put the curiosity to activate that dopamine first so that they will continue to read because everybody wants to be able to have someone click that more. I would say that's the last change I made to it. So there's a little flexibility depending on the application.
Seems like you got that flexibility to grab the audience's attention. What
Yep.
is most speakers fail to understand about audience attention?
I know you just did your TEDx talk. Congratulations. I was trying to find that online. I guess it hasn't been released yet.
Getting edited.
Yeah, it seems like a year before they get that up. So I'll be happy to watch that when it comes out. But yeah, I would say speakers lose that opportunity to make that connection immediately. So a magician knows that the audience is making that immediate decision. Do I trust this person with my attention? Most speakers open with, "Hey, thanks for having me. I'd like to thank the committee who brought me up and Susie who introduced me." Meanwhile, the attention of the audience is sort of slipping away. In a magic show, we don't just start, we open. That moment sets the tone. Speakers should think about the first line that they give. It's like the hook in marketing that we just discussed. It should be bold, surprising, emotionally charged, or intriguing. And then I would say the other thing that I learned from this Broadway director and translates into speakers is most speakers are scared of silence. They don't want to just sit, take a beat, breathe, smile, let the room see you. And they don't understand that presence is also communication. And so if you can make eye contact, let the audience sink in, you're going to be able to earn trust even before words come out of your mouth. So I'd say those are a couple of tips that I've learned from the magic world and being able to perform and grab that attention immediately and not waste those first 10 seconds.
Going beyond the first 10 seconds, there's a principle that I understand you've applied. The principle is every keynote is a homepage. What does that mean?
Yeah. So again, I'm marrying speaking, magic, and marketing. And if you think about every keynote as a home page, you talk about above the fold. That's actually an old newspaper term. When the newspaper was folded and it was put in the newspaper box, those were all the headlines are. And so you want to make sure that on a website and in a keynote, you front load to hook the audience again. What is the promise? Now, you don't want to give away everything. And you hear a lot about tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. I don't really subscribe to that because I think if you tell your audience what you're going to do beforehand, like as in a magic trick, you've kind of spoiled the surprise element. But you want to have them scroll a little bit deeper. So you need to add proof, stories, data, credibility. And all of these things are leading to a clear call to action. So you're going to challenge or invite the audience to do something. You're leading them through this path. And so every website should start, we have the hero section, then we have to establish credibility. Usually that comes with some kind of certifications or logos. I was looking at your website and you've obviously got some impressive companies that you've worked with. Obviously TEDx is shown. That gives me the confidence that it continue down that page, right? As I continue down that page, I'm adding to the story, I'm adding to the credibility, I'm adding to the belief that you're the person that should help me. The same thing should happen in a keynote address. But I will give a disclaimer. What I often see on a website and in a keynote is look at me, look at how great I am. They're not putting themselves in the mindset of the audience or the reader of the website. And so the reader wants to connect with you. The person sitting in the audience wants to connect with you. What are you going to say or what are you going to do that makes them say, oh my gosh, they're talking about me. They understand my problems. It's not looking in the mirror. It's actually looking at your audience members and saying, what pain are they in? What problem do they need to solve? What inspiration do they need to hear? And how can I speak into that instead of shining all the light on myself? So I would say that's probably another 2-hour discussion, but that's a quick flyby on how a keynote translates into the homepage of a website.
I love the term quick flyby. I've used it a couple of times so far. Are there any other Jimi-isms that you use a lot that you're happy with?
Well, one thing that I didn't tell you is I actually was very interested in hypnosis and performed as a comedy hypnotist, and I was trained in that area. And I think one phrase that I use is, you're probably thinking right now, because if you can get inside your target audience's head, if you can get inside your audience's head, there's a feedback loop that happens where they go, how did Iain know that? That's crazy. And then that also establishes rapport.
I've often found that you're probably thinking right now phrasing to be high risk, high reward, because if you nail it, you're totally right. They feel like you've read their mind. And if you get it a little off, there might be a, oh, really response. So some speakers might couch it with, you might be thinking. What are your thoughts on the you're probably thinking versus you might be thinking?
Well, how confident are you in what you're saying? How long have you been on that stage and what audience feedback have you gotten? And so, yeah, I would say if you're testing something out, you might say you may be thinking. If you know it's a dead hit, then again, I'm thinking from an audience perspective related to a magic trick. If I'm 100% sure that they're thinking of the three of spades or they have written down their mother's name on a piece of paper and I know that, then I can be pretty sure on how I phrase that. If I'm trying to gain rapport and I don't want to exclude people, then yeah, I would probably rephrase that to you may be thinking, just to wrap my arms around them a little bit more and not to be combative or too head on with them.
I'm about to get incredibly meta, but what are some techniques that might be magic related, might not be, that you've used in our conversation across the last 20 or so minutes?
I would say that I referenced your successes. I referenced the fact that I had been to your website. I was excited about your TEDx. And I don't know, that may have made you feel pretty good. Hey, this guy, Jimmy, probably prepared. I would say that opens up doors for additional conversations, allows me to ask you specific questions about the experience you may have had giving your TEDx. I've given a TEDx speech, so we're sort of in the club together now, and we have that rapport and we can talk about what that experience might have been. So I would say when you're thinking about marketing, when you're thinking about giving a keynote speech, whatever that may be, you have to have that mindset of staring somebody in the eye, connecting with them on a personal level, and asking permission to go a little bit further in that communication.
For our audience, yes, I felt really good about it. I was reminded about author Robert Cialdini, who's known as the preeminent expert on persuasion. And I think there's a lot of techniques that Jimmy is really effortlessly incorporating into this conversation. I know everybody listening is seeing it with the audio, but there's things that Jimmy is doing as he presents in terms of soft smiling, the very cool backdrop he has in this conversation as well. Maybe I'll get a screenshot of it for later on. There's a lot that he's doing really, really effectively, and I enjoy this conversation. But while I want to make it go on forever, we do have a stop. And so, Jimmy, if people want to learn from you more, if they want to hire you, consult with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm the VP of Brand Communication at Thrive Agency, just like it sounds. We're a 20-year-old, very large digital marketing company. I feel very fortunate to be there. It's an awesome place. You can check out our website. I am on LinkedIn. I post a video every day, Monday through Friday. I made that promise to myself in January. I should have done the math, Iain. That's 261 videos. But connect with me on LinkedIn. Be happy to chat with you in the DMs if you want to schedule some time. If somebody needs a second opinion about digital marketing or if they want to talk about keynote speaking, whatever the case may be, I'm just happy to pour into whatever somebody wants to chat about.
For our audience, that's Jimi Gibson, not Jimi Hendrix, though he's a rock star in his own right. Thank you so much for your time, Jimmy.
Great. Thank you.